Okay, guys, I'm about to introduce John Marie, who we've had on the show before, one of my earlier guests. So I'm really excited to have John Marie back um, for us to continue our chat.
What's good?
How you doing?
I can't complain, man. I can't complain. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Okay. I can see the last time you got your haircut. Is this the
Yeah,
style now?
yeah. I'm also a little bit lighter too. That's a good thing.
Yeah, yes. Okay.
I'm gonna put you in the speakers. There we go. Now I can hear you better.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go live really shortly. Yeah, but yeah, so I know that you've got stuff doing, and so it was we just had a few things I just wanted to catch up on because it's after 2 years, so
Yeah, yeah.
and stuff. So let me go live because I did tell everyone that we were going to go live. I hope this is it. I hope this is it. Yes. So it should be going live now. But yeah, I mean, do you know when I put out the I didn't realize that you did production as well. That the hip hop artist, I can't remember his name. The
Ray Shrimmer.
yes.
Yeah,
So the credit said that you co-wrote it and produced it.
that's correct.
Okay. What I mean, how much of that have you been doing since then? Since because I know, yeah, I mean, you're famed as a world class engineer and a mixer, but moving from that to actually creating the music.
I've been doing that for over 20 years, but finally, Molly Mall said you're not ghost writing and producing anymore.
What do you mean by ghostwriting and producing?
I do my thing inside the mix, but I reproduce a lot of people's stuff and then just write.
But would they just would credit you just with the engineering or mixing and not with any additional production?
That's correct.
Okay. So how did you then, but I guess it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to do it. Another thing then is to be able to...
Claudio Quina knew what I've done. And Claudio used to work with Molly Mall all the time. He said, yeah, I'm getting Jean-Marie to mix my shit. He goes, well, it's great, but Jean-Marie's production is really what you need to be taking a look at. But Jean-Marie produces? He goes, yeah. And I was going by aliases. I'm actually making a new one now that I'm not even going to tell anybody because people know me as a mixer, not also as a writer producer. But look who was my mentors: Teddy Riley, Rodney Jerkins, Brian Michael Cox, Robin Thicke. These are the guys that I learned from. But the other thing that we never tapped in on is why Teddy picked me, because I was a musician first. He met me as a guitar player / engineer, but I was only an assistant. And that's why he took me on, because he wanted that rock sound to be in New Jack Swing. He wanted his drums to hit harder than ever before. And that's when we started working together.
But because you talk about that rock sound, but was that something that Michael, because it seems that Michael wanted to do something to push Teddy out of his comfort zone when it came to the stuff that he was doing with, say, Dave Way in the past?
Well, you have to understand, if it wasn't for Dave Way, I wouldn't have that gig with Teddy. He was between Teddy and Dave. They were saying Dave was actually going to stay in Los Angeles. He really took a liking to it and he wanted to move on. And Teddy said, well, who we're going to use now? He goes, well, what about that kid that we met?
That kid.
that was on the New Jack City soundtrack, which was the Let's Chill. Let's Chill was supposed to be through Keith Sweat. And that's how I met Teddy, as on the Keith Sweat session. And Teddy thought I was an engineer and I was just basically a runner. And he didn't know that, but he heard a practice session. Basically, how I met him, I was playing the guitar. I think I told you this before.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of days later, he goes, I went to the room and he's working with Keith, programming with Bobby Wooten and the company. And Teddy came in there and just totally crushed it, like he always did. And he said, I said, I'm ready to take your order, going to Carnegie Dell. He goes, you going, wow, that's really nice of you to go there. I said, no, I'm the runner for the night. And Teddy said, what? But you're mixing in the other room. And then Teddy went into my room, and that's when he found, they said, I want that sound. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing now. Not even one iota. And that's how it happened. And that's how I started working with Teddy. Because of that moment, 7 months later, and I still remember this, it was in May. I think it was either somewhere in the middle of May, because I went on the Guy tour in June. So it was in May because I just started working that May. So the following May, so it was 1 year to the date that I started working with Teddy, and that's when we did the Dog Me Out remix, Let's Stay Together remix, Stay, no, Tease Me Tonight. Was it Tease Me Tonight? One of the other remixes, and then we were starting on Wreckx-N-Effect. And then he said, I want you to come with me to Japan. And I said, well, I don't know how to do live sound. He goes, no, you're just going to do my sound. So basically, I was working with him on the road, and also at night we were moonlighting for Michael. So we would do all the stuff during the day, and then at night we would do all the Michael Jackson stuff. We were burnt out, but that was my introduction into like 24-hour sessions with Teddy, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
But is this what you wanted, or did you know what to expect when when it comes to being an engineer and mix it to that this is that it could be as busy as this?
I didn't know what to expect, but all I knew, I wanted it. And the only vice that I had at that time was smoking cigarettes. Teddy hated that shit. He hated that. He said, "Oh, you smell like cigarettes," but that's what kept me going, though I thought so. But after I left Virginia Beach, I changed my lifestyle, and I went to a healthier way, because Teddy was one of many hats. Teddy would be the writer, the producer, the organizer, the production coordinator, the musician, the orchestrator. Teddy was everything. He was also my partner in crime when we were mixing. I became a great mixer because I was a better listener. And I listened to my mistakes, and I listened to the stuff that Teddy was doing. So when me and Teddy would be mixing, it would be one up. Like, we would try to one up each other. And actually, Teddy gave me my first remixer credit on Remember the Time. I was one of the remixers. I was programming, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing there either. And Teddy gave me that blessing.
Which version of it?
It's all the remix versions of Remember the Time. So it's like I did a drum thing, but when Teddy did remixes, it was just not one remix. When you get a Teddy Riley remix, it was always 5 or 6 of them. Teddy was very instrumental in my career, and I always will love him for that. I love him to death. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you saw the video of he was in the studio with Bruce Swedien. They were doing "She Drives Me Wild."
Mm-hmm.
Were you there at the time? Because there's a video that's just been just leaked around that has
with Bruce with the oh god, who was the producer that he was saying that to?
But I don't know if it's a producer or some guy who was filming, and I think he was Michael's videographer. But Teddy's there doing. I don't really know. It was "She Drives Me Wild." Who was just doing it on a vocoder. But Bruce Swedien was there in the studio.
We at that time, you know what? I'm not too sure what time frame that was. That was probably maybe earlier on before I got there. It's probably when Dave Way was there. But a lot of times Teddy would be jumping from studio to studio, and I would be in one studio. Then Bruce Swedien would be at Record One, and we would have Larrabee, all the Larrabee rooms. And when I left Teddy, Larrabee was my home ground for quite so many years. And then I went to Soundcastle.
But this was during the Michael Jackson stuff, and this was "She Drives Me Wild" track.
Yeah, but you have to understand, I came in the tail end of a mixing project.
Oh,
Yeah, I was coming in the tail end of the
But your
mixing.
name is all over all the 7 tracks that Teddy did. So there was no
Damn
Dave
right I
Way.
was. Yes, yes, you're damn right I was. I came in there and put my foot in it. I wasn't even supposed to be on that record. I was supposed to be a technical advisor for Teddy. And it was because I did a slave mix for Jam. And it was Renee Moore's song. And I didn't know Renee Moore was coming in that day. I remember we just flew in from Japan. We went to see Bruce that night. Michael came in. I didn't even know that was Michael. He had a hat on. I didn't even know who the hell he was. Sweetest man. He was such a sweet man. He really, really, really was. He was really a sweet man. All that stupid stuff that's on there. No one really knew the intelligence and how wonderful of a human being he really, really was. You know what I'm saying? So, but to get back to the way I got on the record was I met Bruce that night. The next day, there was a 10 o'clock session because Teddy and Bruce and Michael like to work from 10 o'clock, which I think is an amazing thing to do.
10 p.m.
No, 10 a.m.
Oh,
They work from 9 to 5 or 10 to 6.
Oh, so the regular time, so not
That's Michael's times. Then it's our time is from 10 o'clock in the morning till probably about 2 o'clock in the morning. But we would have to be there by 10 o'clock for Michael. So the next day, Teddy had to do overdubs on Jam. And back then, when we didn't have Pro Tools back then, so we would have to make slaves of tape machines and like analog tape. So Teddy and I devised the plan, or I think he kind of devised it with Dave Way at some point, where we would mix all the stuff, do a kick drum, snare, stereo percussions, bass, keyboards, and then we would track it and then we fly it down there, right? And Teddy wanted me to put my 2 cents on it because we were developing a sound. And Renee Moore was like saying, "What are you doing?" You know, I said, "I'm Renee." It's just, I said, "Well, I'm mixing the slave thing so Teddy can hear it, so we can keep going." And he said, "Let me hear what you got." And I don't know what I did. I just made that thing jump from start to finish. And then Renee went out, and all of a sudden Renee comes walking in with Bruce, Michael, and Teddy's smiling from ear to ear. And Renee said, "Man, play that." And I'm grooving. At that time, I always was grooving, and you know, not to make fun of Michael, but I was like right there, and I said, "This thing is jamming, right?" And Michael looked at me and said, "Are you Italian?" I said, "No, I'm Croatian." And that was the biggest joke of the day. And then Bruce gave me the blessing. He said, "Give him all the tapes." And that's how it all began. And I love Bruce for that. So Bruce got me on the record, but Teddy knew offhand that he wanted me to be on the album because we were developing something, and it kind of trickled on. Like the mixes that we gave to Bruce were a little bit more heavy-handed. Like the 808s were a little bit more pedant with Jam. It's like that, right? That little section, and then you hit it, boom. Our 808 was more trunk rattling, and when we got back to mixes, it was more tamed. But I have to respect it because remember we were doing pop, and Teddy really wanted to push the envelopes at that time. Teddy's sounds. All the sounds that were on Michael Jackson Dangerous album was all brand new sounds that no one had. Teddy developed those sounds, and he had a meeting with Michael, and he could have got away with this. He couldn't do the Michael Jackson stuff or the Michael Jackson sound for, say, a New Edition or Jane Child at that time, or even Blackstreet for all that matters, because Joy, the original Joy that was done by Michael, was totally different from the Joy that you would hear now. So when Michael did Joy, it sounded like She's Out of My Life. It was beautiful. Even the original version of Someone Lay Your Hand Out was absolutely extraordinary. But when they brought it back, like Blackstreet got Joy, and then I think Someone Lay Your Hand Out came out on the History record, I believe. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
Those were totally done differently because it was actually almost like a remix type thing. But I no, it was Blood on the Dance Floor. That's right.
Oh,
Blood
Blood
on
and
the
Dance.
Dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Someone Lay Your Hand Out. I don't think no one brought that back. That song was probably one of my favorite songs that never made it on Michael's record.
Now, so when I interviewed Rodney Darkchild, he was
Mhm.
saying that he thought that if Michael had allowed you guys, you and Teddy, to handle the mixing, that it would have had the richest sound, very similar to the Bobby album, because that's my favorite production of you guys. There was just that, but he felt that, you know, with Bruce and the others in there, it sort of, I don't say watered down. It you know, because a lot of us were
It
sort of
was a
like
different
disappointed.
Rodney's absolutely right. Rodney, a lot of people don't understand the geniuses of certain producers and what we have to respect. And I'm gonna say it right on the table. Rodney Jerkins is nowhere near Teddy, but a great reflection because Rodney Jerkins is great. He is an amazing writer. You cannot compare the two. I don't care how much Rodney learned from Teddy. Rodney had his own sound, which made it absolutely phenomenal to work with. When I worked with In Depth, I worked with Teddy. I worked with Rodney, really close. Rodney had a different ear because Rodney's ear was subjected to the time and the movement of Rodney Jerkins. That's what makes Rodney so special because he wasn't catering. He might have adapted a few things from the great Teddy Riley, but it was Rodney Jerkins to the point, and that's why Rodney got that Michael record of the Invincible record. I still think he should have finished it off. I think Rodney should have finished up the final mixes and all like that. But he's right. Rodney's right. The mixes that on Dangerous would have been a lot different. But would have been the great thing for it? No one can really say because we're dealing with a different type of animal. We're dealing with the biggest pop star in the world.
Yeah.
You know, even like the crazy media exposure that whether it was good or bad, he was still Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson had his own sound. Just like Rodney and Teddy have their own sound. But with Rodney, there's a special, like I have a special love for my big brother, Teddy. I will always love him. But then you have my little brothers like, you know, Rodney Jerkins, B. Cox, you know, Pro J from, you know, James Gass from Robin Thicke's camp. There's so many great producers. One of my favorite producers still to this day is D Miles, which is a product of Rodney's camp. And he is probably one of the most prolific producers that we have right now. I think he might be the next Quincy Jones, if you ask me, because he has such an in-depth ear. You know, he's really, really talented. And his and I love his engineer named John Kersey. He's really, really, really talented. He came out the box talented because they come from the same cloth that we all come from. We're a bunch of musicians making great music or trying to make great music. And I think D Miles doesn't cater to the sound of what's now. He's going to the sound of tomorrow, just like Rodney does all the time. Rodney's doing stuff right now that's absolutely amazing. Teddy's doing stuff right now that's supposed to come out relatively soon. They're all talented. I think, but going back to your original question about Rodney saying it would be different, he's right. It would have been the rough mixes that I would, if I could find them. I can't find them because everything was still in locked vaults. Man, them motherfuckers were jumping. Like our snares were killing. Michael's voice was right there. I was developing a sound, and you have to understand when we did those mixes, we didn't do the initial tapestry of those mixes in LA. We did them down at Virginia Beach, and that room was special, man. That
Mm.
Teddy's room down in Virginia Beach was probably one of my favorite friggin' rooms I've ever worked in. Literally my favorite room. And then when I went back down there to work with Teddy on some the I Get So Lonely remixes and the Queen Pin stuff, the room was changed. I guess he did a facelift on it, and it just sounded like ass. And then he had that 9000, that J9000, the J board I did not like in that room. And he hated it as much as I did because it cleaned up the sound. The SSL back then, he had, I think, either a 6000 or a 4000. I think it was a 6000. But it was an amazing sounding console.
It's probably, yeah, as a fan, we did notice after the Bubby and the Bub album, the sound coming out of Future just wasn't as rich, and it couldn't keep up with what's happening out in the market. It felt like the sound, yeah.
Teddy won't say it, but he said it to somebody. He said after Jean-Marie left, everything changed, because became more of a, there was a lot of politics that was going down there, and I'm not into politics. Listen, I'm a street kid from Jersey City, and I was raised differently. We didn't care about the tone of your skin. We cared about the integrity of the man. It's a street code, you know what I'm saying? So I don't go for that bullshit. I never did. And Teddy knew that. And when I left, I talked to Donna and his children, and they said that Teddy really, really missed me. And I really missed him also. I want to stay in Virginia Beach. I loved it down there because all we did was music. But then the elements came in. It just caused a lot of friction. And Teddy at that time had so much stuff going on. So he was hearing all this different type of stuff, and it just made things really difficult for us to do our job. But you're right. After I left, it changed. A lot of stuff changed.
Yeah, and I think as I said, we can only go as fans, and we noticed the music change, and unfortunately at that time there was the Dre West Coast sound, Death Row sound, or Aftermath sound, and there was the Diddy type of sound, and I think almost Teddy, without some guidance, was stuck in the middle of like, which way do I go, instead of staying in his lane, which was being an innovator. And I think we as fans started, we read the whole thing, like who's engineering this, and who's working around that, and we can tell that it wasn't up to stuff. And we weren't big fans of stuff he did with Not a Butter, or the David Miller. It was almost like, well, it was so we could tell that there was a sound change, and that sort of consistency, which you probably might see with, say, a Timbaland or a Jermaine Dupri. They still had the same type of people around, and a consistent sound. I don't know how Timbaland just came from nowhere and just he just became his sound just took over. And then Pharrell, who was under Teddy, the Neptunes go in and come up with a consistent sound, and that was where we felt disappointed as hardcore Teddy fans.
Well, I think a lot of it also had to do with, there was Teddy had a tug of war, man. He was becoming a label at that time, and to get the best work out of Teddy, he needed to stay focused in the music, but he was also an executive, and he also had like many people underneath him on his label. When you're dealing with artists of that caliber, you need to focus in. And I think Teddy was trying to also put his stamp of artistry to the other artists there that really kind of consumed the business side. And I think that I can't confirm it though, because Teddy's a genius. I don't care what anybody says. He's still a genius. I just think that we didn't catch up to his genius as of yet. He's light years, he might have, we kind of might misinterpret Teddy Riley of the old, not accepting Teddy Riley of the new. And if we probably go back maybe 10, 15 years later down the road, we'll say, holy shit, Teddy did it again, but we weren't up to the ear. He's that much of he's like a Dr. Spock, man. He goes out. He's out there, man. He's out there.
I mean,
but he's always a tone chaser too. Like he flips DAWs like there's nobody else's business. And we talk about this all the time, like, between Pro Tools and Logic and, just too much shit is out there. Like the thing he and I talk most, I talked to him last week because I was actually, my son goes to UNLV. He's a baseball
he's
player.
out in Vegas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to catch him, but I think he was in Atlanta doing a project. So he, I didn't want to, I don't want to say what it is because I'm not too sure anybody's supposed to know yet. So he's doing a project out there. And I asked him, I said, oh, are you still using Cubase? Because he and I, when we deal with DAWs, I know DAWs so well, I can hear the difference between each DAW. And a lot of people would say I'm full of shit, so I don't give a fuck what everybody says. I just know it. And there's a couple of people like Troy Taylor would say, how the hell did you know that this kid did it in Studio One? And we talk about that all the time. And Teddy and I were talking about different DAWs. And the thing about Teddy is that when Teddy was doing all the stuff back in the day, it was just A, B. That's it. Now he has A, B, C, D, E, F, G. He has all these elements. Now he's going to try to bring it into one, if that makes any sense. And that's what he was dealing with back then, because he was dealing with the 9000. He chose not to use the 9000. He went into using the, which I thought the Guy 3 record was sonically probably one of the best sounding albums I've heard that he's ever done, and without me being there, because he was doing shit on that board that I was totally enamored. And that was like the new sound. I don't think people accepted it because of the quality of certain songs, and Teddy was trying to really reach for a lot of stuff. But
but there, I think there is that sense where I think, as I said, I've been a new Teddy fan since mid '80s, and one of the things I noticed is when Teddy was part of, when he was doing the GR with Gene Griffin, he was just, Gene just had him work, and then so he was kept under control.
Yeah,
and he was just making the music, and he didn't go anywhere. He was just out making the music.
Absolutely.
When you guys moved to Virginia, it was almost as if, okay, he had to pay for the studio. So he did the Michael stuff, he did the Bobby stuff, he did the Wreckx-N-Effect stuff. He was getting all the mixes that were coming in, got the camp. But my biggest thought was when he did the Blackstreet album, the first one, we were like, wow, love the sound. But when he would officially join the group and he had to go on tour, then he's trying to run a label. And then who's managing all these new people, all these artists coming back for records? How do you then try and go on tour in Japan and try and produce a record? And I think
that's the funny thing. Okay, so here's the funny thing. When we were doing the Michael record, Harvey Alston, his manager at the time, God rest his soul, love him to death.
Is he the one that has the funny voice, like, oh no,
yeah, that motherfucker right there, yeah,
yeah, that's what Levi said it.
Yeah, Harvey wanted Michael wanted us to go on tour. Actually, Teddy to go on tour. And I had to pull Teddy aside because I think it was an exuberant amount of money per week. And I was the asshole that said, Teddy, we can't do that, because I had the list of stuff that we had to finish. There was the summer of 91, we probably worked, I think I saw my apartment maybe twice, stayed at my apartment maybe once or twice a month. I would just go take a quick shower and come back. That's how much we were working. Like literally, Teddy would go to sleep. That's when I would go to work, and he would sleep. Teddy converted, true story. Teddy converted his pool table as a friggin' bed,
Wow.
because that's how much work we had to do. And then when Harvey came in and Michael's people proposed a deal to Teddy to be the MD for Michael's tour,
Wow.
I said, Teddy, we can't do it, man. And Harvey was pissed. You gonna leave all this motherfucking money out there? I said, Harvey, look at how much we have to do right now. He could do the shit you motherfuckers did it in goddamn in Japan. I said, we were doing one record. We have 15 that's on the block right now. And I was like, how the hell are we going to do that shit? We got Bobby Brown we got to finish up.
Oh, you haven't done a Bobby album?
No, we were doing it that summer.
Oh, yeah.
You have no idea how much we were working at that time. And Teddy told him, Teddy goes, yeah, man, we can't do this shit. I don't want to be out on the road. Because when you go on the road with Michael, you're out.
Yeah, and this is, you're talking about a global tour around, it's not that, yeah.
So Teddy would have to either give back the money, which that wasn't going to happen, or people got to wait. The label's not going to happen. And Teddy was the biggest producer at that time, next to Babyface and next to LA and Babyface.
Yeah, and Jamie Lewis. And in fact, I think Eric Williams was with the Flex, Marley Marl's the Flex, and he was at MCA. And he said that Louis Sal Jr. played previews of the Bobby album and said to him, you guys aren't giving us music. Look at what Teddy has done. So it was almost like this. And he said, look, when he heard what you got, the One More Night and all that
One More
stuff,
Night was one of my favorite mixes I've ever done.
He said it was just blew their mind. Look at the kind of stuff that you guys were doing. And so it makes sense that you guys he was just on another level and being sought after. But were you not concerned when he joined Blackstreet though? Because initially he was featured, because then I thought
I was concerned. I gotta be honest with you, I was very concerned. But at that time I was leaving. There was a lot of political stuff that happened. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I think I love that he's in he's in Blackstreet. I just didn't like it at that time. And the whole idea was it was I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all because he just come off of Guy, and that took a lot out of him.
Mm.
And Aaron and Damon are great individuals, love them to death. It's just they didn't see eye to eye at that time. And because Teddy had a lot of work to do. And the thing that I was really concerned about was our time constraint. At that time, I had to be the asshole all the time saying, we got to get shit done. And then Teddy started bringing other influences and other people in there that really totally screwed everything up because other people had other advantages that they wanted to do. I didn't. I was Teddy's right-hand man. I mean, that was my job. Wherever Teddy went, I was like damn near where he went, I went. Because we were that thick, and I didn't want anything from Teddy. All I wanted was knowledge, and also wanted to do my fucking job, and which is to make records, not being like Teddy's best friend, even though I was his closest confidant. And a lot of times with Teddy, Teddy's the boss. That's it. Teddy's the boss, and I try to explain that to everybody. And a lot of people didn't want to do that. They wanted to be the boss. So they tried to do a couple of things. So with that being said, I didn't want Teddy to be in Blackstreet, but it wasn't my choice. I just knew that we had so much stuff on the block that we had to get done.
Mm.
And I think that, outside influences kind of brought him to the table. And the original Blackstreet was Joe Stone Street. Chauncey Black came in there towards the end, about the same time, and I think Levon was there.
Mm.
And I guess something happened with Joe, and that's how Teddy was really bringing in there. And then Dave Hollister came in. Dave he's just a freaking beast. He came in. Him and Levi were really, really great singers. Very, very good singers. I just felt that it had its time. It really, really did have its time, and I just felt that it took a lot of time from Teddy. because now he's back in it. And having a hit record, the second album, having that hit record, No Diggity, took him in a different area, but it also took him out of doing what he does best, writing and producing. And I just thought that at that time he should have been writing and producing more, because you didn't see Dre go out on the road.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
didn't see
Timbaland, Tim wasn't
Yeah.
going out. Jam and Lewis went. I mean,
No.
they'll do the odd dates with the time, but they'll be.
Yeah.
In fact, Morris Day
Yeah.
said that Jam and Lewis, they couldn't do the time because they were like they had too much on their plate. They couldn't just
Way
leave
too
it.
much.
And
You know,
Babyface,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. So it's so funny. I finally met and talked to Jam, you know, Terry's son and Jimmy's son went to school with my son at Oaks Christian. So I always saw Terry, but I never seen Jimmy. And I finally saw Jimmy and talked to him. And I don't think they realized how much of an influence that them and Steve Hodge was to getting my job with Teddy, because those cats, if you listen to the Janet record, Rhythm Nation, they were doing stuff that I had no idea what they were doing with panning. And they were doing automation on their panning, which we didn't do. They had a Harrison board that they were doing all these mixes on, which automated everything. Panning, it was the first of its kind. I just got into business, so I didn't know about this shit. So I would have to emulate that stuff by using delays, and that's how I got better, by doing delays and reverbs and all like that. I was heavily influenced as a guitar player. You want to try to get that sound, you know. It's like you're trying to be like Eddie Van Halen, but you're never going to be like Eddie Van Halen, no matter what. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I try to get really gully with my sound and really try to get innovative. And I say, all right, these motherfuckers were doing it this way. Let me try to do this. And I would have, oh my God, I would have like 4 PCM 42s going to different areas. And I would go with the automation, I would go like this, like almost like a keyboard. So it would go, it was crazy. It was so amazing. Like you can hear it like, that's the way love is. That right there, those little things bouncing back and forth, those are 4 delays going at the same time. So it's going like this. So it made Joe Stone Street sound a little bit bigger.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I did some innovative shit back then. Because I had no other choice but to figure the shit out.
But because I remember listening to Terry Lewis in an interview saying how much he says admires Teddy. Says Teddy's one of the most technical producers he's ever seen. So he was looking at Teddy from the technical and production and you know, so but you said you guys were looking at them and what
I
they
was not Teddy. Teddy never looked. He barely listened to the radio.
Wow.
At that time, Teddy was so focused in on that New Jack sound, the newer version of New Jack sound. I think that's why I lucked out at, because we would make those drum sounds. We were making drum sounds. You know, we were like, I think Bruce Swedien started that shit off when he made like an 808 out of a freaking water jug bottle from Sparklets and went like this and made it was amazing. So then me and Teddy started to do some crazy shit. Like I would be dropping shit off of steps and make this crash sound. We would chop and edit stuff. We were making our own sound. Like I would, you know, it was so funny because I was looking at Billie Eilish's brother doing like the matches. I said, well, I did that shit already. Like that initial, I was doing crazy ass shit. And that was the part of it. Also, the other thing was when Teddy got the vocalist, we were the first ones to do that on Bobby's record. The vocalist was like premiere on Bobby's record. That was huge. You know, we innovated that. Well, he innovated that. I was part of the history of that. But, you know, if we did, you know, we talked about it, I said, well, Teddy, when we get 2 of them, because now we could, because it was like offset it a little bit. So I said, when we get 2 of them, one can go on one side, you go to the other side. And he said, well, when we get 3 of them.
He just
all of a sudden Teddy got endorsed by the vocalist, and then all of a sudden we see the vocalist that had like the rack mount that had 6 outs. That's because of Teddy. Teddy was so technical when it came down to computer stuff. Like he would figure out shit that I was an analog guy. I never was a MIDI guy. I became a MIDI guy when I worked with Teddy. And then I became a better MIDI guy. Actually, Serban was not a mixer at that time. Serban was like a tech. And Serban was really into software. And he really got into Logic, and he really set up Logic really well. And that's where Teddy turned me onto Logic. But mind you, Teddy was using Notator back then. And Notator was the original Logic. And those beats that Teddy did out of Notator were phenomenal. They were hitting. There was no lag. There was something about Teddy's sound where all the MIDI was driven in there, and that program was tits. I wish I still had my Atari, because I would still use that to this day. It's probably one of the best things. When I deal with my production, I use Machina because it's the closest thing, and I remembered what Teddy gave me. Teddy actually gave me my first MPC. He gave it to me that day when we were doing the remixes. I still have it. It's in my closet. It stays with me. Teddy's always with me, every single step of the way. Every session I do, there's always a Teddy Riley flair.
Yeah, as I said, as a fan, one of his biggest fans, I just felt that leaving the studio and being in the group, it just meant that. And this was at a crucial time when the producers started taking center stage. So, because you've worked with Timbaland, you've worked with Rodney, and you can tell that these guys were always working and competing and challenging themselves, but not being distracted with going on tour and running labels. Because even Tim, he's focused on his production. But what's the difference with Timbaland? Because I know you did some.
I missed him. I really missed working with him. I'll give you a quick story. So I'm working with Justin Timberlake, and Justin had an artist named Esme Denters. And Ken at the time, Ken Commissar, was the president of Tin Man Records. So they flew us out there, and Justin was working with Tim on the Duran Duran stuff. And I said, all right. So they flew me out there to London because Justin did the O2 tour. By the way, if you ever see Justin Timberlake live, he's phenomenal. At that time, he was phenomenal. I haven't seen anything recently, but he's amazing, and also amazing talented person. We can talk to him later. But with Tim, there was a production crew that Tim was using all the time. And Tim was doing Madonna, and we were doing as presenters, and both guys, J-Rock and King, were doing the production, and they just couldn't get the drums right for some odd reason, right? And they're doing a bunch of shit, right? All of a sudden, Tim comes walking in, and this is why I knew Tim was a far more genius than anything else. He came in, and this fucking dude goes to the drum machine. I don't know what drum machine it was. I don't know what he did. He went, done. Changed the whole feel of the record. No, you don't need that. Blah, 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 blah. Tim's like, oh, you don't need that. Let's just try this. Let's try this. He did it in less than 5 minutes. The track was done. Tim's hands. If you're ever blessed with a Timbaland production, it is magical. Anything that fucking dude touches is magical. Still to this day.
Yeah. So was he a drummer? Because he seems that when it comes to the drums, that that seems to drive a lot of his tracks.
I think he's more of an innovator. I think he's a tone chaser. Like Teddy was a tone chaser. This fucking dude is a tone chaser. This guy would go in the depths of fucking Egypt to get sounds.
Oh, yeah, okay, to get different sounds.
He was probably one of the most prolific producers I've ever worked with. Next to Teddy, next to Rodney, he's probably one of the most prolific. Every producer I worked with are very special, and they're very special in their own right. Like I'm working with Greg Curtis right now. He's an amazing producer, great arranger, really good musician. But there's something about the innovators, like Timbaland. There's very few innovators right now. And I'm not putting down, listen, I am not putting down any producer, tell you straight out the box. But there's only one Teddy Riley. and there's only one Timbaland. Those two changed the monarch of the 90s to 2000 sounds, hands down. Then you have the Rodney Jerkinses, you know what I'm saying? But then you have everybody else. Those are the ones that I gravitate to the most. It's just like a Rick Rubin thing. So I worked with Rick.
The co-founder of Def Jam.
Yeah, I worked with Rick, and everybody used to say, "What the fuck does Rick do?" That was Chris Rock saying that to goes, "I know what he's doing. What the hell are you doing?" No, the greatest thing about Rick Rubin, he kind of downplays himself. What Rick does best is what Teddy and Timbaland do. He innovates people to get the best out of them. That's what Teddy does. That's what Tim does. And that's what a lot of these, D-Miles is another person, but he does it in a different way. Tim's just fucking, he's amazing. He's amazing.
But you're also known to work with Rodney, and I know you've touched on him quite a bit. When you're working on him with him on the Michael stuff, because when I spoke to Rodney, I said to Rodney that if Rodney did about 6-7 songs. I think the Invincible album would have been better if it was just 10 songs, but then he added 4 or 5 different tracks that just sort of made it too long and just went away and stuff. But he had some real good innovative tracks. We had I think the one I liked was the one that he had with Shaq. I can't remember what it is anymore right now. But you worked on Invincible with Rodney.
I did. I was there from the start, and then I left. I had to leave. I had to leave. It was getting to be too much because it was getting to the point where I was only working on Michael Jackson, and at that time, I just didn't want to do what I did back when I was working with Teddy and lose out on other opportunities because, you are on a Michael Jackson record, great, you get praises, but I wanted to work with up and coming artists. I've always wanted to do that. I mean, you can't. I don't think people really realize. If anybody knows who I am, I don't give a rat's ass who the hell you are, as long as you are respectable. So I've worked with the biggest artists in the world. I worked with Michael. I worked with Celine. I worked with Teddy. I worked with all these people. You're not changing sounds. Young ears are changing sounds. Young artists are changing sounds. And I'd rather go with an indie artist than an established label artist, because what the labels do is not what they did back in the day. True A&R people are gone. They're gone. And when I left the Rodney camp, I felt that I was punching a clock rather than punching innovation and innovation sound. That's but with Rodney on that record, it was this cat, oh my God, I still remember. It was me, the late great LaShawn Daniels, Freddie, Harvey Mason Jr., myself. I brought 2 people in. I brought Mishka in, great writer, songwriter, and I brought the Pro Tools Ninja in, Paul Foley. Now you gotta understand, Harvey Mason Jr. is a fucking fiend on that Pro Tools. He was basically the one who was teaching us how to use Pro Tools in a different way. He was amazing. Rodney will be writing, literally, Rodney's catalog on just Michael Jackson alone was over 50 songs.
What?
50. The guy would be doing 5 to 10 beats a day, and they were all great. All of them. All of them. Every single one of them. He'll tell you. Ask Rodney again. He goes, January 16, you almost had like 50 songs in the Michael Jackson category. Yes. Literally. And what Rodney was doing, Rodney wanted to go back on the Off the Wall album to get that, that's why you rock my world,
Yeah.
That was that homage to that time. But also Michael he wanted to push the envelope. He wanted sounds. Like he literally said this, and I was there. And I remember because we had to do the same damn thing on the Dangerous record. He wanted drums that are not drums. So me and Harvey went to the junkyard to get these drum sounds, breaking shit, closing doors, getting like just crazy stuff. I think we had about an hour or an hour and a half worth of sounds, breaking glasses, breaking doors. It was very interesting. But I did, when you're dealing with Rodney, you're dealing with a heavyweight. Rodney's like a boxer. If you put him in the corner, he is going to come out. And that's what happened with Rodney. That's what makes Rodney so special at that time. And he was the sound at that time. That dude was doing it. I just had to leave. I had to clear out. But Rodney did bring me back to he said, Jean, you got to come back and do Privacy.
Oh, Privacy, yeah.
We were in Studio One, all of us. And I'm living in California. It felt like I was back in Virginia Beach again, where I used to sleep underneath the console. If you ever talk to Teddy again, ask him where does Jean-Marie used to sleep. He'll tell you straight out. He was mad at me because he couldn't find me, right? He thought, see, man, I didn't want him to leave, blah, 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 blah. And he's talking his jargon, right? I'm underneath the console because that's the warmest spot in the studio, was underneath the SSL board.
Wow.
I grabbed him by his leg. He's, what the hell? It's like, I said, I'm always here, man. I'm always here. He goes, what are you doing down there? I said, this is my place where I sleep, so no one can mess with me. No one can find me, because every time when Teddy leaves, everybody in the front office was always wanting something. So I had to do all the clerical work and all the paperwork. That's one thing I learned from Teddy, was I was everything at that time. It was crazy. So I had to find some time to sleep. Everybody was sleeping in the sound lock rooms, the live room or the local booth. So I had to find a spot, and I found it right underneath the console. I had these big old Bullwinkle slippers that I used as pillows. Oh, it was amazing.
My goodness. I mean, I'm sure it feels like a college dorm room or something like that. But and I guess when you're creating magic at that time,
but see,
it's unsustainable.
Yeah, but that's the thing about Rodney. He was creating. You don't do that anymore. That's what the geniuses of, when we talk about, people ask me when I produce, and obviously, I produce.
Yeah.
I don't care about time. Perfection has no time limit, and perfection is not one song. Perfection is a vibe. Teddy, Rodney, Brian Michael Cox, Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam, all the great producers are captivating perfection of that moment at that time. They're not, you might hear people try to take people's ideas back in the day. That was called biting. It seems like everybody's biting right now. Everybody
sounds the same. Yeah, sounds the same. So even not only do the artists sound the same, but the production sounds the same. It's like people chasing the beats. Just as we wrap up, what can you? Every time I hear a story about Teddy or Virginia or even New Jack, Big Bub's name comes up, from My Prerogative to the Bobby album. Everyone just says, yeah, Bub was there. I'm thinking, but how he's like a ninja. What can you tell us about our friend Big Bub? I mean,
what can I tell you about Big Bub? He was magic, man. That dude, you could have a shitty day and Bub come in there and just really just change everything. Bub, first of all, Bub is a songwriter as well as a great artist. He's an amazing songwriter. The stuff that he did for Mary, the stuff that, he wrote fucking Prerogative. You know, that's Bub's singing prerogative. You know what I'm saying? So Bub was an essential part of the new Jack sound. But you gotta understand, Bub was part of that whole cultivating movement when Teddy was young. They were all together they were doing Latin quarters. They were performing all the time. These guys were performers, and Bub was the best one out of them. that big boy, he knew how to do it. But he also was a peacekeeper too. He was really a big peacekeeper. He was amazing. He still is. I just talked to him over the summer. He was absolutely phenomenal.
Well, I mean, it's good. I mean, I think we there's lots of love for Bub as an artist, part of today, but singing. But I think a lot of it goes on notice that he is an amazing songwriter, and because he wasn't trumpeted like a lot of other people. You just don't realize that he was there, and he was everywhere, making a big impact.
Oh, he was a big influential part of the summer of '91. Really big part of that. Bub was really, really a big portion of that. I forgot, you know, we were doing the soundtrack for the House Party 3 record or House Party 2 record. I'm not too sure.
House Party 2, yeah.
Yeah, so we were all part of that. And those were the few sessions. Those were the guinea pig sessions because the studio wasn't really fully functional. It was half functional, and we made it fully functional. It was really interesting. And also I was still learning as I was going. I was only basically I wasn't even a full-on engineer yet, you know, let alone a full-on mixer. I became a mixer as I was an engineer. And I tell people, well, how do I be a dope mixer? You got to be a great listener. You know, that's the one thing.
What would you say? Because if for those of us who might say, what is an engineer and what is a mixer? Because we see the names written down, and we know. So Teddy tends to come down as a mixer, mixing stuff. But there's an engineer who does the recording. So what would you tell us is the difference between what a mixer does, what a record engineer does?
Well, I think nowadays, I think people look at engineers as just a tracking person. An engineer right now is somebody who knows how to use a DAW, and somebody knows how to move stuff around, because certain producers don't know how to do that right now. And that's what engineering does. I think the lack of knowledge that the schools give on vocal microphone technique is a problem. Back in the day, the engineer was the mixer. You see what I'm saying? So a mixer is the guy back in the 70s was basically like the assistant. All he did was take the stuff that was there and mix it down to 2 tracks, or what was left by the engineer. And then in time, in the 80s, a mixer became the guy, because of all the automation, that interprets the songs differently to give it a certain sound. When I got involved, I think I was more of a mixer before an engineer, because when Teddy met me, I was mixing and not knowing what the fuck I was doing. I wasn't really tracking. So I didn't know how to track properly until I worked with Teddy. And everybody said, oh, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. I said, well, why not? So my mixing became my engineering, because I hear things differently. An engineer was the guy that technically was sound on what to do and how to do things back in the day. Now an engineer is like, if you know how to run Pro Tools, you're an engineer. You know what I'm saying? And now with mixing, it's really difficult to put a stamp on everything, because everybody has like these reference mixes they've been living with. And I think that's where sounds get really messed up. I'm quite proud of all the stuff that I've been doing right now, because they're letting me do my thing. There's a guy named J Dot that has High Standards Records, which has Coco Jones. And I was blessed to write for Coco on a song called Falling. But he let me do my thing. He says, John, I need you to go back and do your thing. And that's why her records sound totally different. Totally different. I think that the engineering portion of today is gone, unless you go into Nashville. unless you go into somebody who knows how to do stuff properly. I don't think people realize that you have to be somewhat of a musician to hear things right, because I would get stuff still to this day that the vocals sound god awful. They have like 18,000 plugins to make it sound right. And my problem is the guys that are engineering it or the clientele that's hearing it are hearing it differently. So they have to put polish on it to make it sound right on speakers that they really don't know. And by the time it gets to me, it sounds like dog shit because I have a pair of speakers that has no frills. That's always been my case. And I think that was one of the main reasons why Bruce loved me so much, is because I wasn't using Yamahas as my main sources. I was using Oratones, because my philosophy was, if I can make these motherfuckers jump, then it's going to sound great around the whole world. And I was right. You know, and it's been till to this day, everybody's saying, oh, how the hell are you getting this low end? No one can touch me on a woman. I don't care who you are. No one can touch me on that shit. But I don't like to do, you know, roughs. I like to do records. And, you know, there's something to be said about that. I think if we can get our new generation of writers, producers, and artists really try to adapt to what was happening back then, I think we would find the next Michael Jackson, the next Celine Dion, the next big artist, because there's no really big artists right now. There's only a lot of content. And I think that's a problem. It's like, none of these artists really get paid from everything. And that has to change also. You know, it's like, you know, coming from the writer producer side, it's really shameful that we're not getting paid like how we should be getting paid. And I blame a lot of that with the streaming networks, because we should be getting paid a hell of a lot more. And and the artists should be adapted to a hell of a lot more. If that's the case, I mean, we're you know, why be signed? Just put your own shit out there. And because people were asking me, why is your mixes sound different? Like they were talking about the Weekend record that I did. Why is your mixes on the one mix that you did for the Weekend sound totally different from the whole album? It's because I did it. It's my sound. And I wasn't catering to anybody else's sound. I was doing it. And it was great to work with Abel. I think Abel is fucking phenomenal. You know, I just don't, you know, one of my biggest dreams is actually to mix for Bruno Mars. Because I think, to me, he's the closest thing to the next level. But what is the next level when everybody's like on TikTok and they don't even savor the song anymore? After 30 seconds, you're done. There's like, I think within the next 5-6 years, we're going to see a lot of kids going back, because I'm watching it with my son who's 20, and I'm seeing him saying, I don't like that no more, because he's becoming to the fact, it's like, because he's been listening to great music from back in the day where people adapt to, you know. It's like, I think the music industry is going to change again. And I think it's going to go in a way that I think it's going to be a little scary for a lot of people. You know, when you're dealing with artists right now, they can't afford what we used to pay. And you go to these bigger name, they go to these big time mixers, and sometimes the ego gets in the way, saying, well, you need to pay like almost $10,000 for this mix, or $5,000 to this mix, because of somebody's name. With me, I never really depended on my name. I depended on the artist that I worked with. So my name could be synonymous for life on my records. I don't give a shit what I did last year or last minute or last second. What's important right now is the artist that I work with right now. What's important right now is not me putting fucking tags on my names on the front of the track. I think that's bullshit. I think that takes away from the artist itself. You know, I think we're so captivated about. I heard somebody saying that they're going to put their name as a mixer on a tag. I said, are you fucking kidding me? So I it's like, at some point, where do we put a line on quality versus quantity? And I think the ones that we love so much have a great quality. And you got tastemakers right now. Puffy, to me, is probably one of the biggest tastemakers that we've ever had. And He's still relevant. He's still crazy as cat shit. Actually, I loved working with him. He was actually fun. He was actually a real smart guy. But even the taste making that Puffy did, people are hating. You know, instead of like embracing the culture that these men of my time monarched what is a society of today. It's them doing the legwork. Come on, man. Teddy was the first guy to go, yup, doing tags before tags were even done. He wasn't using it as a tag. He was using it as a call and response. Teddy, fucking back when he was on Big Daddy Kane, he was the originator of that shit. People tend to forget that. Puffy, oh my God, the consummate dude. He was the quintessential New Yorker of putting a dab on it. To me, I thought that Puffy was the new Sammy Davis Jr. of our time. He was an entertainer, an innovator, a great businessman. Well, I don't know about Sammy Davis business, but I know that Puffy was a great, businessman. I mean, he, regardless of what people have to say, the dude made a lot of money, man.
Yeah, well, that still does. Yeah,
great. He knows how to pick artists.
Yeah, but it's strange that he's still, as we talk about being relevant, but he was always known that he could promote, he could sell sand to the narrative. That's what I would say, because he would just comes in, he's on your track, and he was always the selling party and cool and everything, and he still does it now. But just as we wrap up, what should we expect from you? Either engineering, mixing, producing, or writing?
As for mixing right now, let's see what I have up right now is the Coco Jones stuff that's probably going to become. Well, actually came out last week was Till the End of Time with Leon Thomas as a mixer. As a writer, I was falling with Coco Jones.
Wow.
As for production, because I obviously we had this conversation that I was ghost producing for so many years, and if it wasn't for Molly Mall, I would never come out as a producer. I've been doing a lot of production, but it's different. It's because I'm going back to my whole rock roots, because everybody's trying to do this trap stuff. So let's go back to the rock roots, but put back hip hop. It's almost like a Rage Against the Machine type thing that I'm producing. I started with this girl named Babe Animal about that, and she's amazing. We did a song called Rage. But I think the project's going to be called Laszlo's Best Dogs. And these are great musicians, and we're putting it together. And yeah, you might not catch my name, and I won't give you my name, but there might be something in lurking in the future as like I did beforehand. Like when I worked with Babyface, I went by a producer's name called Riff Raff, because I didn't want anybody to know I was producing.
Oh.
So I was working with Babyface back in 2000, 2002 as Riff Raff, and I was doing remixes that way.
What were some of the big things you came out with?
It never came out. It was there was a Latrell it came out with, and it was something that the Neptunes were doing, and they didn't know who the producer was, and they found out it was me. It's like, because I don't want artists, I don't want other producers to think that I'm trying to take their production. And that's because that was the biggest thing back in the day, was like, oh, John Marie's trying to reproduce my track. No, I'm trying to make hit records. This is the way I was taught. You got to understand, Teddy was vicious on me, but he was making me better. That's why my mixes sound different from everybody else's. I'm not saying that they're good or bad. I'm just saying that they're different. I don't care. I don't care if you mix the Migos. I don't give a shit. I just care about the sound and how my sound is competitive to that sound. And that's what a producer does. But when you call me as a mixer, I mix. When you ask for a beat, I give you a beat. Just like Powerglide. People couldn't believe I did Powerglide. They still think I mixed it. Jason Joshua mixed it. And Jason's a good friend of mine. And Jason didn't even know I produced it. Jason did not. He goes, I like to see how you mix this one. I said, I didn't mix it. I wrote it. He went, what? Why didn't you tell me? It's like Jason would say, why the hell you didn't tell me? I said, well, does it really matter? Yeah, it matters. I said, no, man, it doesn't matter because everybody was putting tag. He goes, why don't you put your tag on it? I said, what do you want me to say? The white ghost is on the track. Come on, man. I ain't gonna do that bullshit. Come on, man. Yeah, but Teddy, there's a lot of stuff that I did back, even with Rodney, even with Teddy, Teddy would always encourage me. I said, Teddy, look, I'm just mixing. He goes, dude, you just did the beat. I said, no, that's all right, man. I didn't know the technicality of it because I really didn't care. I just care about music. Music runs through my veins. This is what I live for. And I probably die with, doing music because I can't do anything else. Before this, I didn't want to do what I used to do. You know what I'm saying? So, this is I have a career with it. My success is that I'm in it still.
Yeah.
It's like, because money comes and goes. Trust me, it comes and goes. There's a lot of people lurking in the dark trying to push everybody out of the way because they want to either make the money or be a part of the success, and they don't do shit. And I don't allow that. I don't allow that. I don't allow other influences to influence records. And when people say, yo, I got a Grammy record, I'm already saying it's not. Because you are so out of touch. You say, if you said to me, I think I got a great album, then I might consider it to be a Grammy hit. Because to me, the Grammys is not how it used to be. There's more categories now. There's more people to vote for in that category, where I think that the level of competitiveness is gone.
Yeah. You
know what I'm saying? I think that's the true thing about it. I mean, I'm also into mixing movies. I love that. So I got my introduction to do surround sound on Beyonce's live records. I really got into it. That's why I do a lot of Atmos mixes right now. I was very fortunate when the COVID thing happened. I was doing a lot of Atmos mixes. And I'm one of the innovators of Atmos mixes, which I'm really proud of, regardless of what anybody else says.
Well, but John Marie, it's always been great. So we should expect. I think finally, if the industry is not making the money, well, I'm sure people are making the money. But
they're making the money. They're making the money.
But as a mixer and a producer, is the what you used to get, say, back in the 90s and stuff, has, because the music can be accessed for free, even though you've got streaming service, but if you have a YouTube, or even if you have you can still listen to it for free. You don't have to pay the premium stuff. And even if you pay the premium stuff, they don't send the money back to you guys. It's the labels, they get wholesale prices, so they make their money. They don't, but it's the artists and the writers and producers who miss out. So with that said, I would assume artists and labels would try and cut costs to make themselves more, to cut costs. That then means that quality gets sacrificed because you can just touch it up with software, and people are doing stuff on their laptops and releasing it.
That's the thing.
So for yourself, somebody like yourself with a technical background and all that history and stuff, is it harder do people think, well, we can bypass you and just record our stuff ourselves online, get a friend who's good on software and just put it out?
That happened last night, actually, because I have to go down to San Diego today. That happened last night, where people are sacrificing because of some deadlines. People don't understand there is no deadlines anymore. That's a fake. That when people say that, we have a deadline to make, you can move a deadline. Let's just get the quality of the work. A lot of times, a lot of people don't want to spend the money. A lot of times people, like certain artists, think that, because they live with their references for so long, that they tend to lose the sight that no one gives a shit what you heard. You got to put the best product out there, and you better be competitive, because certain artists that I work with, they said, yeah, we could have used the rough, but let's put Jean Marie's hand on it. Just like Coco Jones. Like, I was blessed to work with Coco Jones. Thank you, Mike Jackson. But, with Coco Jones, the owner of the label, who happens to be a producer as well, said there's a different quality of sound that I'm trying to compete. And even Def Jam even said that. Tunji, who I admire, I'm looking forward to meeting him one day. He said, yo, who did this? He goes, this genre. He goes, why does this shit sound so much different? Because we're elevating it. We're trying to bring quality back because everybody's trying to put content out. I do believe it's going to be like the 70s again, where I think small labels are going to be cultivated, because I don't care how much money you have. I care about the quality of work. Money will come and go. I do believe that the labels are kind of in a really weird situation, because smaller labels are doing it because they know how to do it, because they're renegade. Like, I'll give you one label that I really, really admire. It's the Griselda Group up in Buffalo. They figured this shit out. And that's some boom bap hip hop. I'm into that, man. Amani Caesar, oh, that girl is, woo, that woman is amazing. And here's the thing, it's that lo-fi quality thing that's their sound. That's their sound. That's that Buffalo sound. Conway, Benny the Butcher, all those guys from up there, I got mad respect for them. Mad respect. And that's where I think that smaller labels like that are really going to cultivate it, because they don't have to go, there's no middleman anymore. There's going to be streaming in them, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? And then it's going to be accordingly. And I do think that, when you're dealing with trends and times, we don't, if I tell you, if I was a fortune teller, the one thing I would try to find is the next new thing, like TikTok is right now. I would try to find the next new thing and try to really cultivate that world. But I think the attention span for these young listeners, and I have a 13-year-old daughter, is that they don't want to hear anything past a minute. That's a problem.
Yeah.
So we might as well just do hooks.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think I heard Lil Nas X saying, he's got a song that's less than a minute and it's a hit. And I guess but everything, YouTube Shorts, you've got Instagram Reels, and they're all doing 59 seconds max, so that it can just spread content. But anyway, quality is quality, and there's.
But you see why though? You see why they're doing it for 59 seconds, right?
No.
What are you really doing? You're listening to mad commercials. They're all spots. They're all commercial spots. And how people get paid is that people pay commercial advertising in between those things. If you look at TikTok, every 5 TikTok, there's somebody trying to sell something.
Yeah.
That's how they're paying. That's how TikTok's getting paid, with advertising. So if you put shit down for a second, now you're talking about 3 minutes, there's a song. Just like if there was like 2 songs back in the day, 2 or 3 songs on the radio station, then they put an advertising. If I scroll down like 5 times on TikTok, I'm going to get an advert. And it's mostly, if you notice, it's mostly like these gaming things, like these things that they use on your phone. Yeah. That's paying the bills. People need to understand where the resources are. Like, to me personally, I have an artist that I'm working with, but she's a model right now. So it's kind of hard to do both. And it's unfortunate. But my brainstem comes from that portion of it. How can you push an artist on a low level? And that's where you have to go. You got to go to the source.
Yeah.
So there's we could talk about this. This could be like a whole workshop,
I'm definitely going to get you back. But just as we leave, your 5 favorite John Marie tracks that you've worked on. So either mixing, engineering, if you can go back from your Teddy days, Rodney J's, Timbaland days, but your 5 best tracks that you have been part of. Either, or your most memorable, but your best, the ones your favorite, because when I asked Rodney for his top 5 songs, he didn't include The Boy's Mind because it was, even if it was his biggest record, but he picked the favorite ones, the ones he felt were impactful to him. So it's looking at your 5 songs that when you look back and say, yep, here's my
I would say probably the Bobby Brown song,
One More Night. So
Till the End of Time.
till the end of time, we're like, I did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Then the other one is probably the most memorable one. Anything off the first Robin Thicke record.
Wow.
That was the most memorable one. That actually changed my whole thought process of studio life. Changed the whole concept of it. Then possibly working with Rodney on Say My Name.
Oh, he did talk about, he said that the mix he did, because he got garage here in the UK, and then that's the kind of the kind of the down, but we're used to it here. He said when he played it, it was terrible, and everyone talked him out of it, and then he had to change it. How bad was it?
It wasn't bad at all.
The original, what he did, but
Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. But he made it work. He made it work. The other thing was probably Celine Dion.
Wow.
The Celine Dion thing was memorable. And 5, the 2 rock productions that I did with Gary Hoey and Stevie Salas and Sprung Monkey. Those are the ones that are memorable. The ones that I was in the studio, the ones that I was tracking, those were the ones that I really enjoyed, because that's when I started really understanding production. Is when I started, I gotta take that back. Anything with the Alcoholics.
The Alcoholics.
They taught me more about hip hop than hip hop ever taught me. They're the ones that innovated me to get my sound more gully, as I like to call it. And because I'm from New York, I had always a gully sound, but they made me even more dirtier. And nobody was getting me on pop stuff because my shit was always banging. It's always the hi-hat's too loud. I remember we were working with Dave McPherson. He was at Sony Studios, Sony Records. They had me fly.
Is it the same Dave McPherson, Backstreet Boys, Rough Ends?
Yeah.
Everyone talks about this guy. Is it?
Dave McPherson was essential. He was essential. He actually said, John, the radio department wants you to come back. And I forgot the name of the group because the hi-hat was too loud. And pop radio was gonna like that. I said, are you fucking kidding me? So they flew me out, just to prove a point. They flew me out. I did the recall. Didn't touch a damn thing. Sent it back, goes, that's what I'm talking about. Son of a bitch.
Oh goodness.
So yeah, there's so many stories that we can really talk about. But you know, to take 5 great things, I can't. I have every moment that I had in the studio. I mean, I'm just saying it, but I just thinking back right now, every moment seems like a top 5 moment for me, because I've been blessed to be in the business for as long as I have been. And people still ask me, how do I do this? How do I do that? How are you making this sound this way? Because I don't mix like normal mixers do. Dave Way's another person that's like that. There's so many innovations. Like there's a couple of people that I do like as mixers, and there's a bunch of them I don't like. But who's to say if I was right or wrong? It's subjective to the young ears that are listening right now.
Yeah.
I much rather do like stuff that people are not doing. Like that's the reason why I worked with the Alcoholics. That was way out of my comfort zone, but it was the most fun because this was the greatest thing. We would cut the song and mix it the same fucking day. That was classic. That was amazing. The Exhibit was the same way. We did the Exhibit album, Paparazzi. We cut it and mixed it the same friggin' day. And it was the most beautiful experience as being in the session. Because we didn't have the budget. back then, budget was still normal, but if it was today, it would be like a full-on budget. But back then we didn't have that budget, and they couldn't afford me, because at that time I was really up there in price. And I said, you know what? I took a major hit because I wanted to get better at tones. So I was challenged every step of the way. And working with E Swift, Tash, and J-Ro, Exhibit, King T, James Broadway, those guys made me better as a mixer till to this day because of those sessions. I mean, we would cut an album less than 2 weeks. That's hot shit. And they were, as much as they smoked and drank in the session, and I had to be the fucking door monitor, because they would say, yo, man, you come in. I said, man, if I smoke that shit, nothing's gonna get done, man. So they were so efficient. Real quick, Exhibit personifies success and professionalism that no one knows about. This dude would be so goddamn prepared. He didn't like the drops. He would do his own verse again, clean version. Clean.
Wow.
He said, no, man, I'm not into that drop shit. I'm trying to make that other money too. The clean version. Because at that time, the drops weren't really doing that well. So he would do a whole new song clean, still with the same concept, but just taking out the curse words. Do you know how innovative you got to be that way to make it clear like that and follow suit? Man. That's where I learned a lot of stuff. Same thing with J-Ro, same thing with Tash, same thing with E Swift. They were amazing. They were absolutely amazing. And I love those brothers. I really, really do. I learned a lot. Those were the best 3 years of my life working at and that's how I started working at Soundcastle. No one could afford to work at Larrabee, and Candace, at that time, her name was Candace Korn. Now she's Candace Stewart. She gave us the room, and it was probably one of the best moves I ever did. As much as I lost my room at Larrabee because I was working at Soundcastle, it was one of the most amazing things I've ever done.
So do you still need a big studio now, or do you do it you're mixing and engineering at home?
No, it's ever since COVID. Actually, I'm building a studio right now. That's why I got blared out, because I'm still building. And so I use my makeshift room here. I converted one of the rooms, got a bunch of gobos, started building around it. Now the other room is going to be possibly in the back of the house. We're building a studio. And I just wanted to be closer to my daughter. And it's been the best work I've done in the last 4 years. All the Robin Thicke stuff was done here. All of Yellow stuff was done in here. All the Coco Jones stuff was there. All the Atmos. This was supposed to be my Atmos room. It became everything. And shout out to Apogee. That changed my life. Getting the Apogee Symphony Mark II changed my whole life as a producer as well as a mixer. Amazing. And it's also embracing the technology of our time, where I try to tell people, think about concepts. Like everybody say, yo, man, these vocals sound amazing. How did you do it? Did you use your knees? I said, no. I used the Slate microphone. And at that time, I didn't use the Slate. I used something else, and I used the Apollo, and my ear triggered off on something. I used an expensive microphone, like a vintage U67. And I think Doc McKinney did it with Abel, with The Weeknd. And the concept was, Doc said, hey, you should use the console in Apollo. There's no latency. So I took out all of the outboard gear and tried it. It was the best vocal sound. It reminded me back in the day. Now, when I was doing all the stuff at my other studio up here, I didn't understand why my SSL mixes sounded thinner than the mixes that I was doing at my spot. I called it the clubhouse. It was the zoo. And one of the techs told me straight out, he said, well, you're coming out digitally into a digital board. So it sees that unison, where when you go from analog or from digital to analog, the differential is different. It's like the SSL board does not hit properly because the headroom of Pro Tools or any other DAW is probably about 20 some odd dBs up there. So it's always pegging and it's not making it sound right. Where like the analog tapes, we would go like +6, even +9, and it gave a nice warm crunch. You don't get that. I don't care how much outboard gear you use, it starts to get thin. So I have a different concept of it. Trust me, I've been fucking up for like the last 10 years with this shit. Actually, longer than that, about 15 years. And it's been like, I remember talking to one of my producer friends last week. His name is Keith Andes. He said, goes, are you using any outboard gear? I said, no, unfortunately, I took away from that because every time I plugged in my 1081s, it sounded thin. But then I used the plug-in version of the 1081s, and now it's up here. I'm like, there's something to be said about that. And he said, well, how the hell did you get it wide? I said, well, I came up with a concept that I put on the back end to make it sound like a console, not just an SSL. It has an SSL, it has a Neve, and it has an API. The API gives me that bottom, that booty. The Neves gives me that mid, and then the SSL gives it the top. So it's like this converter that I have that I basically made, and it just goes back in digital. It's actually kind of cool. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, well, you've educated a lot of people, and so I mean, it's been really great, John Marie, because as I said, it's been almost 2 years, and be able to get and
let's not wait so goddamn long.
No. Before the end of the, I mean, probably over the summer, once you've got something that you've got stuff out, and so we can talk about.
Well, we talk all the time via text, man.
But it'd be good to be keeping in track, especially if I spoke with Damien just last week, and so. He was, just trying to get about the guide tour being out and stuff. But it'd be great over the summer, just as you have stuff out, just to and go back, just to get the fans to know what's going on. Because as I said, there's a lot of history we talk about, but it's important to hear about what's happening now and stuff.
It's so funny. My god sisters, my sister, I can't even call her my god sister. My sister Alicia is married to Bobby, and he lives right down like maybe 3 or 4 miles away from me.
Oh, so okay.
So yeah, me and Bobby are real close.
Wow.
It's almost 30 years.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to seeing them on the tour. Teddy said Alicia was the girl on the saxophone.
Yeah,
Rum Shaker video.
Yeah. I've known Alicia that long. Me and Alicia have been friends. I met Alicia on the Bobby album. That's how I met Alicia. We were doing a stint out in California, and Teddy and Alicia knew each other through mutual friends, and I met her, and we just hit it off, and we've been friends ever since.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. I mean, we do wish Bobby well. And as I said, it's good to see that he's with the guys going back.
Yeah. No, they're doing it. They're doing it. They're not losing it. They're doing it.
Wow. Yes. Anyway, John, it is about it's just 10:30 here. But I appreciate you calling us having this chat and stuff. But
please, next time don't hesitate. I love to talk. I love to talk about history, but I also want to try to innovate our new ears and old ears. That age ain't nothing but a number from both sides.
Yeah.
And concept is always key. And if we can just cultivate the concept, that'd be great. But tell everybody, love one another, be kind to each other, and smile once in a while. It doesn't cost anything to smile.
Definitely. And if you want to follow your stuff, it is your website. Is it JeanMarieHorvat.com?
JeanMarieHorvat.com. You can always catch me on the Instagram thing, JM Horvat on Instagram. I haven't been really, the funny thing about it, it's just too much fucking work to do this shit. I'm trying to write instead of going on TikTok. And it's like
TikTok and Facebook and everything. Yeah. But his Instagram. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, but guys, I mean, as I said, I will just search him on Google and everything pops up and stuff. But the legend of John Marie. It's always great to speak to you and stuff. And
yep.
Yep.
I was actually trying to find the shirt. I had the old Future Records shirt. I was gonna show you. I found it at my mama's house over the summer. Obviously, we had an emergency, so I had to go over there and handle some stuff. And I saw my old Sigma Sound shirt, and my mom saved the shirt that Teddy gave her. Wow. That had his face on it. It was awesome.
Oh, is it the one with the half face?
Yes. I'll send you a picture.
Yeah, please do. I mean, we do look forward to seeing. I mean, as I said, for people like me who've been rooting for Teddy since the early 80s and stuff, your mid 80s, and I spoke to Jimmy Jenkins, who is who was Andre's the co-founder of Uptown, and they talked about how they hijacked Teddy from Rooftop Records when he was 14. They knew he was an innovator. They knew that he was. They built Uptown on his sound. I mean, so they've confessed, and I think they're going to have, when they come out with their stuff, their documentaries and the biopic, it will be shown that yes, they really had to. And that's when Gene came back out and he was like, no, where's this kid? Because they knew he had the sound and they knew he was an innovator. It's just, but anyway, so it's always good to celebrate him and celebrate what's going on, but it's good to celebrate your contributions and everything.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings.
Take care, John.
Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of the Halftime Chat community. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. But most importantly, why don't you consider being a member? That's a way of supporting the channel, but also getting a lot of videos ahead of time, a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and some exclusive content that doesn't get shared. But anyway, thanks for watching and thanks for being part of Halftime Chat. Sweet.